Hi, and welcome to this month's episode of QI Corner here on Best 1031 Online. I am 1031 broker James, along with my co-host Greg Burns of IPX 1031. Hello, Greg.
Hi, James. How you doing?
Good. Hope
Yeah.
well. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. It was really, really nice. Thanks. Yeah, we went out to the desert and played around out there. We do that every year, and so it was a lot of fun.
Like Joshua Tree?
Like Arizona, like Parker, Arizona. Yeah, out at the river. So we did a little boating. We did a little off-roading in the desert. The weather was great, and everybody had fun.
Awesome. What a great way to spend Thanksgiving. Any travel plans for December, the end of the year?
No, we're going to be stay put and probably just kind of hang out. My daughter's, a water polo player, and it seems like that I've also committed my life to water polo. So we'll be around probably with her for most of the time.
Women's water polo. They're fierce and dirty than the guys.
I know it's a rough sport.
My cousin played water polo, so and I've got a buddy whose daughter plays and went to a match. I was like, good gracious. Anyways, I'm going on a cruise.
Cool.
I'm going to be in the Mexican Riviera for a week, so that's going to be fun. But let's dive into this month's episode and what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about something that's always been a topic with the people that I run into. It's a very common question, and I see a lot of content on it about online, and that is being able to exchange into a vacation property that you can ultimately move into. So I recently was in a webinar, and fellow investment broker who practices on the Eastern Seaboard, he said it's very common that, some of his older clients that have built tremendous equity in their investment properties, they want to retire in Florida. So they will sell their property, they'll go down and buy their dream home in Florida, rent it out for, he mentioned 5 years, and then they would move into it. Tell us your take on that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. If you look at the section code, right, 1031, it doesn't really say that you have to hold the property as an investment forever. It just says that your intent when you purchase a property has to be to hold it for investment or business use. So there's a revenue procedure that exists. It's 2008-16, I think, where it basically kind of gives a safe harbor for 2 years. So it basically says that any property that's been held as an investment for 2 years or more, in an audit, the IRS can't challenge the held for investment portion of the exchange. So it kind of says, hey, sell a property, do a 1031 exchange, go buy. Maybe it's, a future dream home or retirement home or second home. And as long as you hold that initially as an investment for at least 2 years, it should satisfy the IRS's requirement for held for investment. And so they can't challenge that part of your exchange. And so we do see quite a few number of people that are doing that. In fact, I think we, as Californians, we single-handedly doubled the value of properties in Idaho by people exchanging into that market that ultimately wanted to retire there.
Right. So there really isn't, and I know that I've had this conversation with other people, and I'm sure you have as well, is that, the tax code there is no hard line hold period on any part of the holding of a replacement property. I know that the rule of thumb that most savvy CPAs will tell you to do it 2 years, get a nice paper trail. IRS is always concerned about intent, right?
I think that most of the CPAs are using 2 years now. So when I first started 25 years ago, most CPAs would say, hold the property for a clean tax year, probably satisfy the IRS's requirement for held for investment. And the reason that they used that, and that was a rule of thumb, not a rule of law, right?
Right.
Was that long-term capital gains taxes are 12 months or more. So they felt like, okay, well, if you hold it for 12 months or more, it's considered a long-term investment, right? And then when that revenue procedure came out back in 2008, CPAs started to feel better about 2 years because they said, hey, now we've got something to kind of lean on. If you hold the property for 2 years or more, the IRS basically based on this revenue procedure can't challenge it. But like you said, there's really nothing specific in 1031 that says you have to hold the property for a certain amount of time in order for it to qualify. I think most CPAs, would tell you if you're converting something to investment to personal use, probably try to hold it for at least 2 years.
Right. Now, here's what's interesting about what I heard from this guy in this webinar. this last week, is while he shared the story of that, as he was sharing, he said, yeah, then after 5 years, they go down and move into it. And then the capital gains tax go away. And I was like, whew. I didn't call him out on the webinar, but I'm like, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I wish that we could magically make taxes disappear, but that doesn't happen. Your basis follows you into the new property. Now, there is a kind of a way to go from tax deferred to tax free. So let's say that you had a client that rented a property out. They did a 1031 exchange, bought a new property, rented it out for 2 years, and then moved into it and lived in it for 3 years. Once they had owned that property for at least 5 years, and they've lived in it for at least 2 of the 5 years, they could take a portion of their primary residency exclusion, which is $250,000 for a single person or $500,000 for a married couple. So in an example where you rented it out for 2 years, lived in it for 3 years, you could take 3/5 of your exemption because they prorate it. So it would be roughly 60%, or roughly, if you're married, $300,000. And you could take that money tax-free. So there is kind of a way to go from, kind of tax deferred to tax-free, depending on how large your gain is.
Right. Because my question is that clearly the capital gains doesn't go away. So it does stay with the property. So it sounds like that it would be, since most of the people that are doing that are retired people, typically.
Yeah.
The best thing to do would be go ahead and wait until they want their dream home, right? Sell the investment property they have now, go buy that home, rent it out for at least 2 years, if not longer, and then ultimately move into it, retire in it as a final destination, because then when they pass, those capital gains tax do go away and their heirs get the property and maybe they maintain a vacation home on the beach.
Yeah, we call that the swap till you drop approach. You just exchange throughout your lifetime. When you pass away, you get a step up. Obviously, if you're in a community property state, you get a full step up on the property. If you are not in a community property state, you only get half the step up. But I do think that that's a great, good advice, for somebody that looks ultimately for a final destination. But we see clients do it in various different things. I mean, I had a client one time was trying to get a listing for an apartment building in the Valley, was really struggling to get it. He asked me if I would go and talk to the customers with them. I was happy to do that. And as I was talking to the wife, she was like, I really want to take a portion of the proceeds and go buy a condo in Hawaii that we can use as like a vacation home. But I know I can't do that because I'm selling an apartment. And I'm like, you absolutely can do that. You can take a portion of the proceeds and go do that. And so that's what they did. They sold this apartment building for about $4.8 million. They took a portion of those proceeds, went and bought a vacation investment property in Hawaii. And then the balance of it, they went and bought a triple net lease investment. And then she called me up about 90 days after they had completed their exchange. And she said, hey, Greg, I want to thank you for doing the exchange for us. But I have a question for you. I said, okay, well, what's going on? She said, well, on the Hawaii condo, I already have 90 days of rental income, which is more than enough to satisfy the IRS's requirement for held for investment. In fact, you only need technically 2 weeks at fair market value. She said, but I know that under the code, in order for it to be an investment, I'm only supposed to use it for 14 days. Is there any way that I could spend more time there and kind of not get in trouble? And so I said, well, if you look at the statute where it talks about vacation investment properties, it does say anytime that you spend there doing maintenance or making improvements does not count against your 2 weeks. And so the first 2 years that she owned it, she did a lot of maintenance and she made a lot of improvements. If anybody's ever owned a second home for a push, right?
Improvements
It's a lot of work anyway.
Once to get done. Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I love it. Okay. So just to recap. So if somebody knows ahead of time that that's the plan, so they've owned their initial property, the subject investment property for 25 years. They want to go buy their dream home. They go pick it. Is there any planning or any other paperwork they should be doing with their CPA?
No. I mean, they're selling investment property. They're going to initially buy investment property. The only other thing that they really want to talk to their CPA about is recapture of depreciation tax. Because I think CPAs are kind of split on this particular topic. some CPAs believe if you convert it to your primary or a second home, it's no longer investment, it's considered personal use, that you at that point have to pay the recapture of depreciation tax because it's no longer a depreciable asset. The other half of the CPAs believe that you don't have to pay the recapture depreciation tax, that you can actually defer that or delay that until the asset is ultimately sold. So you should definitely have a conversation with your CPA about when you make that conversion from investment to personal use somewhere down the road, is that going to trigger a recapture of tax, issue?
Yeah. And neither one of us are going to say which one's correct, right?
No.
So then if there's no paper trail or anything you have to do up front, then you could ultimately decide to move in a vacation home, even though that wasn't the initial plan.
Yeah. I mean, some clients, they just, they do a 1031, they go buy a condo somewhere and they ultimately decide, well, you know what, maybe I'll move into it. They owned it for 5 or 6 years as investment. And they said, okay, well, that may be a good place for me to retire. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a plan going into it. If it is the plan, just know that you're going to want to hold that as an investment for at least 2 years before you convert it to personal use. But from a paperwork standpoint, you're just buying and selling investment properties, just a regular 1031.
So this actually, while we were talking, this brought up another question that is in line with this conversation. And that is, earlier this summer, I had somebody that was considering, they were selling a multifamily property. They wanted to exchange into a triplex in Lake Tahoe. I don't remember where, I don't remember where they lived because they weren't in California, but I know the triplex that they wanted to retire was in Tahoe. Really nice.
Okay. Yeah.
Triplex. And live in it. They thought they could do that because there's 3 units there. They're only living in one, the other 2. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to have to talk to the people. They never called me back, so it never went any further. But I was like, I don't think that's something that you can do.
I think I talked to those people. So, and I've had that conversation.
I'm not surprised.
So you can do that, right? But the investment portion of the triplex has to be equal or greater in value to what you sold, right? So if I sell a deal and I exchange into it a triplex, and the 2 units that I don't live in, that I rent out, are equal or greater in value to what I sold, then I think it works.
Oh, got it. So if you sell $1 million property and you buy a $1.5 million triplex with each door being worth $500,000, 2 of the doors equal $1 million, you've satisfied that, you can live in the third.
Yeah, I think you're good.
How about that? Okay. I'm glad I asked that question.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Good stuff on today's QI Corner. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to see you until 2025. So have a happy holidays and a happy new year. And for all of you out there, make sure you like, subscribe, make comments. We'll definitely get back to you on the comments. Thank you very much and happy new year to you all.